Okay, good evening. Good evening, everybody. It is day 2. It's day 2 of the residency. Tomorrow evening, we have a reading at 6 o'clock. It's at the National Gallery. That's gonna be a really good one. This is gonna be a really good one, but Jess Arndt, Laura Mimosa Montes, Emily Prado, and Megan Milks are gonna be reading tomorrow evening at the National. So super excited for that. Tonight we have Adie Steckel and Sara Sutter, and I just wanted to give a little context. Adie is a guest artist and will be teaching a class on archives, in the archives on Friday and Saturday. So that's going to be really awesome. We're really looking forward to that. And Sara is faculty who has been teaching the 6 packet class. And Sara will be working with the Fab 5 next week. The Halliford School of Graduate Studies, the writing fellow is Edie Guy, and Edie is going to do some introductions. So thank you. Let's give Edie a hand. It's like a machine.
Oh my God, that looks slightly dangerous. Oh. I'm going to be introducing Jay first. So we're just doing a little switch here. Jay Ponteri directed the creative writing program at Marylhurst University from 2008 to 2018 and is now the program head of PNCA's low-res creative writing program. His book of creative nonfiction, Someone Told Me, has just been published by Widow and Orphan House. He's also the author of Dark Mouth Inside Me and Wedlocked, which received an Oregon Book Award for creative nonfiction. 2 of Ponteri's essays, Listen to This and On Navel Gazing, have earned notable mentions in Best American Essay anthologies. His work has also appeared in many literary journals: Dismantled, Gaze, Ghost Proposal, I Rhyme, Seattle Review, Forklift, Ohio, Knee Jerk, Cimarron Review, Tin House, Clackamas Literary Review. While teaching at Marylhurst, Ponteri was twice awarded the Excellence in Teaching and Service Award. In 2007, Ponteri founded Show Tell, the workshop for teen artists and writers, now part of summer programming at Portland's Independent Publishing Resource Center, on whose resource council he serves. He teaches memoir classes at Literary Arts. He lives in Portland. Please welcome Jay.
Okay, thank you, Edie. I'm gonna track my own time here. Okay, so both Taylor Swift and I have a project, our own respective projects called 1989. Taylor's is a really incredible record, and mine is a manuscript in process. And they are just fragments describing pre-internet life. So I'm going to read 1 or 2. I don't know if I'll get through 2. This first one is called Personal Calls. You're out and about, and you wanted or needed to talk to a friend. Mind you, your sense of what it means to need is shaped by your white cisgender male middle class privilege. And you're 25 years from framing it, feeling it that way, which is to say it's not actually a need, but a want. What does it mean at this 1989 moment to be out and about? You might be at a record shop or a convenience store, or perhaps you're just driving around because you're bored, and being away from your house where your parents were gives you the feeling of autonomy more than you actually had. And you want your friend, likely to initiate or execute some, that didn't sound good. I'm gonna turn this down a little. That doesn't happen again. You want your friend, likely to initiate or execute some scheme related to sex, drugs, and drinking. And you're a few years away from seeking out a friend to process a problem or express your feelings. So you try to find a payphone. No shortage of functioning payphones in America, or a telephone to borrow, perhaps at a bar or at a restaurant. A bar, like a cafe, was the kind of place you might hang out at a while, but unlike a cafe, the bar maintained a more casual atmosphere, alcohol, not caffeine, which helped to normalize the behavior of customers borrowing the telephone to make brief calls. In the case of actual emergencies, it was common practice for any human being with telephone service to let complete strangers use their telephone to make a call. But remember, this wasn't an emergency. This was a need want. You'd even consider returning home, driving miles out of your way to use your own telephone. But even if you didn't want to return home, you'd do anything not to return home where your parents were. You'd do this just to have access to a telephone. And you'd probably not bother to make the call in the first place unless you believed your friend would be near a telephone they could access, say at their home or at their place of work. And if your friend was at their place of work, you had to take into consideration their access to a telephone and space time to use that telephone. And that depended on where they worked. Say they worked at a restaurant, bussing tables or in retail, stocking apparel or working out on the floor or at checkout. Calling their place of work and asking to speak to them would get them in minor trouble, e.g. anything from an irritably expressed reprimand to a more direct admonishment with specific prohibition of taking personal calls. This is what we called them, personal calls, unless it was a family emergency and not your friend's best friend wanting to collect their share of cash for a bag of dry, harsh, burn the throat weed filled with seeds that popped when you smoked them. A safe route might be to drive or take the bus to where your friend worked and try to talk to them, sans their boss noticing. You'd visit your friends at their places of work. If it was appropriate for them to receive visitors, and if it wasn't appropriate for them to receive visitors, say a daycare or at a restaurant, then you might go anyway, if you didn't mind putting them at risk. Let's say it was a sit-down restaurant, which is what we called restaurants that weren't fast food restaurants. And your friend worked as a waiter or busser, then you might step inside and stand near the host station or around the bar. These were places where it it was common to see people standing around till they noticed your presence. And if they worked in the kitchen, you could hang out back near where people took smoke breaks and ask them if they could tell your friend to come out. And people took smoke breaks outside, not because it was illegal to smoke inside restaurants. At this point, most restaurants still maintained non-smoking sections. And when you walked into them, it felt as if you were swimming through an ashtray. But because they wanted to put more space between them and their work. If it was a fast food restaurant, you could just show up, order something or not, and sit down in a booth and wait for your friend to join you on their break. And if they didn't have a break, they could just grab a wash rag and volunteer to wipe down tables and talk to you as they wipe down the table at which you sat. If it was a daycare, you might just wait outside in front of one of the windows in view of the wobbler room in which your friend worked till they noticed you standing there on the sidewalk, and that could take a while. Okay, just read one more. These have pictures too. I'll show you the picture on this one is a picture of my Sony Walkman. This piece is called Nobody's Home Except the Person Knocking on the Door. It was possible that I might show up at a friend's house and that friend wouldn't be home. And it wasn't at all unusual that I wouldn't check in with him first to make sure he was at home, which is to say it was common practice to show up places, sans any advance notice, at a friend's house or apartment, whatever. He was or was not expecting me. That didn't matter in 1989. He didn't know where I was, and I didn't know where he was. We had no way of figuring out where each other was, or perhaps we just figured it out by imagining where each other might be. He might be depositing his paycheck at the bank. He might be filling up his car with gas. He might be hanging out with another person, and then I could picture whom those people possibly were. Our imaginations kept us connected to each other. I'd wait on the porch of his house or on the back deck, and if my friend's parents showed up, they might tell me to come back later, or invite me inside to wait in the basement, or my friend's bedroom, or in the TV room, although at that point we still referred to this room as the family room. Still felt the need to buoy the illusion that this room was a relational space and not simply a space to gather around the TV to turn away from the violence, past and ongoing, wrought by whiteness and all the systems of oppression. The TV included whiteness erected. Often I'd wait up to an hour or so. I'd sit on the porch or back porch and track my friend's journey back to his house, stopping by another friend's house to take a look at a used subwoofer or fuzzbuster he was selling. Or maybe I'd think about sports or girls or remember something I'd watch out into the, or remember something, or I'd watch out into the distance for cars driving up the cul-de-sac with the hope it was a red Honda Civic. Or I'd play a game where I counted the number of cars driving by, predicting that my friend's car would be a certain number, the 10th, say the 27th maybe. And I feel slightly self-conscious if one of my friend's neighbors walked outside and noticed me sitting on the porch, waiting on the porch. Like I somehow had to explain to them what I was doing on the porch of my friend's house. But I really didn't, because my skin was olive and my Italian Americans with this skin complexion had nearly completed its assimilation into whiteness. Nobody was calling the cops on me. They knew me and knew what I was doing, but I was a boy and felt as if I owed everybody an explanation. I was a white American boy tethered to an excess of inherited cultural shame that was, unbeknownst to me, the result of transatlantic chattel slavery and the murderous foundations of the country in which I lived. I didn't know I was contributing to the ongoing stealing of land from the Nishabi peoples. But my body knew, and it felt ashamed, and we'd do anything to turn away from this shame, which included cranking up subwoofers and fantasizing we were rock stars. I would have had my Sony Walkman with me, an early version with the metal headband. Imagine tightly bending a wire hanger over your head and the sponge ear pads thinly covering the miniature prickly metal speakers. It was like wearing a brace around your head. And the listening experience wasn't private because everyone around you could easily hear whatever you listened to. U2, the Cars, Michael Jackson, Blondie, Prince. And what if the batteries died? Why didn't I consider why Michael Jackson lightened his skin color? I might pace around the yard or run plays in my mind, or if I had a football with me, I might pass the ball to myself while announcing the play either in my thoughts or aloud if I thought nobody was around. If my friend didn't show up after an hour or so, then I'd go elsewhere. And my friend and I remained not at all knowing what either of us were doing and where we were doing it. Thanks, everybody.
All right, Adie is gonna be next. Adie Steckel is a writer, editor, and community archivist based in Portland, Oregon. They co-edit the nonprofit press and literary record label Phonograph Editions and work for an HIV/AIDS and LGBTQ plus health and social services agency, Cascade AIDS Project. For Phonograph, they curate and edit the Woodbury Sessions, a series of archival poetry LPs produced in collaboration with Harvard's Woodbury Poetry Room, including John Ashbery Live at Sanders Theater, 1976, and Audre Lorde at Facet Studio, 1970. At Cascade AIDS Project, they serve on the committee managing the region's largest HIV/AIDS archive, held at the Oregon Historical Society. Their writing appears at Annulet, a journal of poetics, Full Stop, Old Pale Mag, Tagwerk, Variable West, and elsewhere. Please welcome Adie.
All right, how's this crane situation? All right, well, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me, Jay. I'm gonna be reading some poems that come from a manuscript in progress or process, as you say. And I haven't really looked at these poems or thought about them or thought about or written any of I haven't written since October 7th, really, with the exception of like one short essay that was just like a vent. And on October 7th, I was at a residency. Okay, so that's not true. No, I have written since October 7th, but I haven't written since the day that I got back from a residency that I was at on October 7th and up to the 25th. So I was digesting the news and reading and writing in a little box, and yeah, we'll see what happens with these because I haven't looked at them since then. They're from this manuscript that is about my mom's suicide, which took place near the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge. So I'm thinking about the occupation of that refuge and occupation and then occupation. So, conjunction. As if a syringe drawing estrogen from the urine of a pregnant mare, nostrils flaring, blood flowing into the gap. As if cutting back the shrub to see who could see back. If turned over shoulder, riding along a long moon, waxed, spent ahead, wane, done, days, debt begun. As if the colt would mother, when you became one, I was torn from the earth and hung. Oh, I guess I should have said this is, the manuscript is called Strange Meetings, which is from a Wilfred Owen poem that, Joyelle McSweeney kind of discusses, the strange meetings that happen in the necropastoral. So like this death-ridden, like toxic space where, the urban meets the rural, supposedly. So this is called Angel of Mercy, Angel of Anarchy. Portrait of a man with nothing at the mercy of terrible geography, drawing scars across my neck on guard. I begin again inside a second body, exhausted by looking up, drawing scars across my neck, jaw spiraling. My chest once weighed 5 more phantoms, went to a strange meeting of phantoms. Each says, I am a whole, each says, I am whole. I refuse to be your blockade, I refuse to be your barbarian. My child is dead, paper falls from the sky. Jerusalem lies, warning fly or die, and in infinite directions, and I refuse to choose. I refuse to choose, not to, between. This next series of poems is a series of erasure poems from various texts related to the occupation of the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge. And this one sort of laces together the executive order that established the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge. And gosh, it weaves it in with another historical document, but now I can't believe I'm forgetting. I'll think of it as soon as I read the poem. Okay. So the series is called Refuge. 1. Congress shall hereby dispose of all rules and regulations respecting the territory which touches the shoreline of lakes and the streams and waters connecting these lakes, and nothing in this Constitution shall so be construed as a preserve and breeding ground for native birds of the United States, and the taking or destruction of birds and eggs, nests, and the taking or killing of any species may be prescribed by any state, and warning is expressly given. And this is from a previous lawsuit that was filed against Ryan Bundy, the brother of Ted Bundy. He was arrested for speeding through Zion National Park. I, Ryan C. Man, am not and do not and never have and am not I, Ryan C. Man, and I am and not to be, and I say here by the hand of I, Ryan C. Man, will hold any man placed upon I, man, by any man, by way of I, and I say here by the hand of I, Ryan C. Man, any man, whether you like it or not, must bear any and all full man. Three, so autumn migration begins the arrival of departure, prolonging extended as many marshes and meadows. More evident aggregations occur in rarely seen regions. These birds continue to be commonly into early October, but the majority left by mid-October. Yeah, these are from some news coverage about the occupation. Stand atop gold in the bowels, sink into the rich lode, an open pit, the same ground where once stood the nation, remnant regions pulled close to the surface. 5. Looking through grinding stone, projectile points, boxes infested, Curation admitted absolutely every building has a problem. She said her last time in the basement was sometime. More than 10,000 artifacts stored, from the public. We have not ever talked about the public, damaged before it was not legal. 6. Fish returned to her office, found her office a mess, slightly belongings strewn about. Refuge, a huge muddy footprint, the solid wooden door hanging off the frame. Obviously missing archaeological computer left in her computer, not just her computer, but all computers. The refuge had logged on to her knees. 7. Who should be collected upon this now constant source of annoyance? Somewhere in the barren, bitterly cold, a body believed to be almost destroyed will hang by a thread. You will see it set apart to settle there. Okay, that was the end of that sequence. This one is called Erotic Landscape. A couple of these are named after some Eileen augury. Augury. The Wings of Augury is one of the statues. Eileen Agar is the artist. Yeah, so this one is called Erotic Landscape. The year the war started many years before, her bare feet stole over nuclear lawns. 2 young men stood across the lake. 1 scope each study, stole a coin and tossed it. It will not end well. When she unlatches the window in her room of the house that Jack bought, Cape Cod floor plan, 66 seconds per settlement. Granny Scooney in the attic, unknowing her exit. When the words refuse to form excuses, interracial explanations, miscegenations, thought Jack and wife in flight. White when the color has fallen off the trees, the neighbors examine rake and pile, brick and bow tie. What will they think when she is drugged into docility? When the dog rounds the corner from Hempstead towards Division High, she turns the other way to the tracks, lays her head back on the rail, seat facing the city for the last. Valero. We are the tallest thing. A storm is moving up the soap trees where the ravens stand with inflated breasts, tracking the wind. I pull my shoulders back, open the door to the women's room. I'll just read one more. This one is a longer one. I don't really know how it fits, but it's called Cherry Hill. I can't remember the name of the French restaurant, and my dad can't remember the address on the hill. I was born where the surgeon fell asleep in his car. On Cherry Hill, my sister died. The nurses are quitting now, the ones who don't believe in science anyway. The teachers too, and the public is falling apart that never was together. October is falling all over the car, all over the sleeping surgeon. His sandwich getting stale on the table. I want the egg sandwich from the French restaurant, but I don't know the name or the street, and my dad doesn't know the time or my name. He calls me by his own shame, and he doesn't know the names of my sisters or their due dates, and having children is irresponsible anyway, he says, now the Surgeon General has issued his warning. My dad's father was an addict pharmacist, and there was a violence in the home. We drove by it, the screen door kept swinging open and slamming shut on the street where my dad tried to make it to the major leagues before he became a specialist in addiction, solving the problem of his father over and over. We lived on the hill with the hospital, and he worked where my sister died. He played softball in the evenings. The fields are turf now, and the Hendricks house demolished. On the windshield, the Space Needle plays its song. Still raining, still dreaming, still the same dream of slight return. And what angel if you called out would listen to this song of the surgeon's work on a body that will die, on a species that will perish in a world of medical terror and plastic band-aids that are not made to stick but to sell, and any angel could save us, but there aren't any. So what new ways of being might these words open instead? The rain is pouring. Now I step into Elliott Bay to pick up Sadako and the 1,000 paper cranes, trying to remember something of it. I remember not understanding the words nuclear, radiation, leukemia. I understood that I was ashamed. My mother died. The cranes came rolling, and I knew they were references to something about death I didn't understand. But I did understand that I was missing something. The surgeon said we make a straight line like this to indicate masculine. We move the nipples outwards like this, as if he could show me with his fingers what is masculine I didn't want. When I walk on Cherry Hill, there is no distance between the breath I draw and the breath you lost. The poem is the breath, total relation. I tossed you as shards into Alki, an acceptable pollution, the Geyers cycle around the Pacific, parts of you in Hiroshima and back to Manzanita. You might be a blue heron or in the stomach of an albatross.
Last up, we have Sara Sutter. Sara is a writer, educator, student, and psychonaut based in Portland, Oregon. Sara holds a BA in philosophy, an MFA in poetry and creative nonfiction, and is now in their second year at California Institute of Integral Studies, where they are focusing on somatic and psychedelic assisted therapy. Sara teaches literature and creative writing at University of Portland, Pacific Northwest College of Art and Craft, Willamette University, and virtually at Harrisburg Area Community College. While Sara's most recent writings have been toward fulfilling academic requirements, published works appear in Fence, the Seattle Review, Nailed Magazine, and others, along with her chapbooks, Oh to Be a Dragon, and Siren Nomelia. Sara is slowly at work on a new hybrid project that explores the generative and spiritual qualities of trauma. Sara Sutter.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Nice to see you all. Some familiar faces and a lot of new faces. I'm really excited to be part of the residency again. Thank you, Jay, for having me. Yeah, I've curated a list of some poets from Palestine over the years, and I'll be sharing just a bit of background from each poet and then reading their works as well. The first poet, his name is Mahmoud Darwish. I think it's probably actually, can y'all hear me? Okay, great, thanks. I was just sort of nervously moving it.
Okay.
Mahmoud Darwish is a Palestinian poet and author who is regarded as Palestine's national poet. Naomi Shihab Nye describes him as the essential breath of the Palestinian people. Darwish was born in 1941 in Palestine into a land-owning Sunni Muslim family. And during the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, his village was destroyed and his family fled to Lebanon. They returned, secretly re-entering their homeland. And as a young man, Darwish faced house arrest and imprisonment for his political activism and for publicly reading his poetry. He lived for exile for 26 years between Beirut and Paris. He then settled in the West Bank. In 1988, Darwish wrote the Palestinian Declaration of Independence, which formally established the state of Palestine. He's the author of over 30 books of poetry and 8 books of prose. The first piece is called In Jerusalem. In Jerusalem, and I mean within the ancient walls, I walk from one epoch to another without a memory to guide me. The prophets over there are sharing the history of the holy, ascending to heaven and returning, less discouraged and melancholy, because love and peace are holy and are coming to town. I was walking down a slope and thinking to myself, how do the narrators disagree over what light said about a stone? Is it from a dimly lit stone that wars flare up? I walk in my sleep, I stare in my sleep, I see no one behind me, I see no one ahead of me. All this light is for me. I walk, I become lighter, I fly, then I become another. Words sprout like grass from Isaiah's messenger mouth. If you don't believe, you won't be safe. I walk as if I were another, and my wound a white biblical rose, and my hands like two doves on the cross, hovering and carrying the earth. I don't walk, I fly. I become another. No place and no time. So who am I? I am no I in Ascension's presence. I think to myself, alone, the Prophet Muhammad spoke classical Arabic. And then what? Then what? A woman soldier shouted, is that you again? Didn't I kill you? I said, you killed me, and I forgot, like you, to die. The next piece is called The Cypress Broke. The cypress is the tree's grief, and not the tree. It has no shadow because it is the tree's shadow. Bassam Hajar. The cypress broke like a minaret and slept on the road upon its chaffed shadow, dark, green, as it has always been. No one got hurt. The vehicles sped over its branches. The dust flew into the windshields. The cypress broke, but the pigeon in a neighboring house didn't change its public nest. And two migrant birds hovered above the hem of the place and exchanged some symbols. And a woman said to her neighbor, did you see a storm? She said no, and no bulldozer either. And the cypress broke. And those passing by the wreckage said, maybe it got bored with being neglected, or it grew old with the days. It is long like a giraffe, and little like a dust broom, and couldn't shade two lovers. And a boy said, I used to draw it perfectly. Its figure was easy to draw. And a girl said, the sky today is incomplete because the cypress broke. And a young man said, but the sky today is complete because the cypress broke. And I said to myself, neither mystery nor clarity, the cypress broke, and that is all there is to it. The cypress broke. The next poet is Zakaria Muhammad. Zakaria Muhammad is often described as a rebellious poet, rebellious of tradition that comes before him within poetic craft, and rebellious in his unrelenting efforts to tell his story and preserve Palestinian heritage. He pursued his passion for Arabic literature at Baghdad University, where he studied and honed his craft. And after graduating in 75, he moved to Beirut, where he made significant contributions to Palestinian media and cultural platforms, establishing himself as a versatile and prolific literary figure. He's written many volumes of poetry, children's literature, novels, a series of plays. He passed away actually in August this year in Palestine. This piece is called January 2nd. I shot a gazelle once. Here, a gazelle is a poetic necessity, nothing more. The truth is made of black and white sheep. Anyway, I set a trap for the gazelle and it fell into it. I had an indescribable longing to savor some salty gazelle meat. I don't like the lamb they sell in stores, but I do like your hand as it pins metals on my shoulder. I like your lips when they say you're the pollen of the palm tree. Me, a palm tree? I'm the steel that wounds it and the terrifying moon that sacrifices it. I can't bear my exile any longer. I no longer distinguish between store-bought gazelles and the lamb of the poem. Casting out the gazelle is futile. The pollen of the palm tree is futile. If I die, log into my inbox. The password is written on a scrap of paper on the table. There you'll find my will, and you'll grab the gazelle by its horns. And these last poems of his are from his collection called The Dutchman's Pipe, in numbered sections. 1. It is best not to be here, even when you are. To be a stranger in a familiar land, ostracized in the land of your tribe. It is even best to spray paint on a wall, "I'm not from here," and then shake off your wings and fly with the intention of never returning. I'm not speaking of light estrangement, but rather of winds and cyclones, of rain trickling down around comets. He who has a wing will never be a stranger. The most important thing is to be vigilant. Never let a vine catch you unawares and climb your shoulder to tie its stem to your lapel. If you allow that, you will become a peg. More beautiful than all of this is to be a balloon. A handful of air will lift you to the skies, and a pinprick will erase you in seconds. 2. Listen, I am a marble statue. You can break my hand. There is no pain. You can break my foot as well. I have nowhere to walk in this marble. I have been standing here for ages, and I have seen enough. Listen, I am a word written with chalk on the board. Erase me with your palm. Do not be afraid of the void I will leave behind. My existence is not real. The students are in their seats, and they want new names. Their mouths want to chew on other words. 3. I don't send you short letters, but I pour milk in the clay pot so it ferments in silence, just for you. Like an ant, I drag wheat from my house and put it in your path. I am a long line of wheat seeds just for you. A long, invisible line. 4. I put wounds in a bag and throw it on the horse. They are provisions for my journey. Life is licking sutured wounds incessantly. No, life is reopening sutured wounds. There are so many stars above my head, more than necessary. I only need one star to reach my destination, so I keep my eye on the labyrinth star and follow it. No one owes me anything, nor do I owe anyone anything. I will stray far and delve deep. 5. My being is 3 pyramids, like the ones in Giza. There are no tourists. I am the only tourist. I climb them at daybreak, one after the other. My being is 3 antelopes on the dunes. I hunt them. I hold my bow. Sand quickens under my feet. They escape and run away. 6. I sing at night so that the day may be its sibling. How else would I make sure that my 2 dumb donkeys, night and day, stay together? They will slip away if I don't tie them with this thick rope of singing. Take what glues your night to your day from me. Take what makes your thread slip off your needle too. What makes you strangers, even to yourselves. This next poet is Lena Khalaf Tufaha. She lives currently in Washington State, but she has lived the experiences of first-generation American immigrant and expatriate. Her heritage is Palestinian, Jordanian, and Syrian. She's traveled across the Arab world. She writes poetry, essays, translations. She's published 3 books of poetry, 2 chapbooks, many essays, reviews, translations. She translated the poems of Zakaria Muhammad, whom I just read. She spent 10 years working with Seattle's Arab American community in organizations to help tell the stories of people who live between 2 homelands, people who speak in translation and navigate the realities of long wars. Her father attended university in Baghdad with Zakaria Muhammad, the previous poet, And in an interview with the Poetry Foundation, Lena Tufaha describes the grief of coming upon Zakaria's work later in life as a grief that's particular to the diasporic experience. Her first poem is called Upon Arrival. You will need to state the reason for your visit. Don't say because I want to walk down old roads and caress stone walls the color of my skin. You will need to state the reason for your visit. Don't say because the olives are ready for harvest and I will coax the fruit from the trees, press it into liquid gold. You will need to state the reason for your visit. Don't say because my parents' house still sits empty on a bluff overlooking the sea. The green shutters my grandfather had just painted remain sealed shut. The green shutters my grandfather had just painted remain sealed shut, and the army listed the property owners as absentees. You will need to state the reason for your visit. Don't say because I am carrying prayers in my suitcase for a people who wait, and I'll unfold them, embroidered linens of verse, and spread them out across the land. Mountain, stone. Do not name your daughters Shema. Courage will march them into the bullet path of dictators. Do not name them Sundus. The garden of paradise calls out to its marigolds, gathers its green leaves up in its embrace. Do not name your children Malak or Ranim. Angels want the companionship of others like them, their silvery wings trailing the filth of jail cells, the trill of their laughter, a call to prayer. Do not name your sons Hamza. Do not taunt the torturer's whip with the promises of steadfastness. Do not name your sons Muhammad, Ahed, Zakaria, Ismail. They will become seashells, disappear in the sand. Do not name your children. Let them live nameless. Seal their eyelids and sell their voices to the nightingale. Do not name your children, and if you must, call them by what withstands this endless season of decay. Name them mountains, call them stone. Just a couple, just two last poems to end the reading. This second to last poem is by a poet who died recently. You may have heard his name in the news. His name is Rifat Al-Adir. He was a poet and writer and professor at the Islamic University of Gaza, father of 6, killed on December 12th at the age of 44. Al-Adir co-founded the organization We Are Not Numbers, which matched experienced authors with young writers in Gaza and promoted the power of storytelling as a means of Palestinian resistance. He and his whole family had relocated in previous years due to bombardment from Israel and the United States. He described it as something they didn't ever want to talk about how their lives were destroyed again and again every few years. The sounds of strikes, he said, was like the whole earth reverberating. Even the slamming of a door brings you these memories. There is no post-war trauma for Palestinians, he says. It's nonstop. And he wrote this poem anticipating his death. He called it, If I Must Die. If I must die, you must live, to tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings. Make it white with a long tail, so that a child, somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad who left in a blaze, and bid no one farewell, not even to his flesh, not even to himself, sees the kite, my kite you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment an angel is there, bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope, let it be a story. And thank you all for listening and being here. This last piece is by Naomi Shihab Nye. Shihab Nye was born to a Palestinian father and an American mother. She grew up in St. Louis, Jerusalem, San Antonio. She draws on both of her heritages to use her writing to attest to our shared humanity. And her poem is called Jerusalem. Let's be the same wound if we must bleed. Let's fight side by side, even if the enemy is ourselves. I am yours, you are mine. Tommy Olofsson, Sweden. I'm not interested in who suffered the most. I'm interested in people getting over it. Once when my father was a boy, a stone hit him on the head. Hair would never grow there. Our fingers found the tender spot and its riddle. The boy who has fallen stands up. A bucket of pears in his mother's doorway welcomes him home. The pears are not crying. Later, his friend who threw the stone says he was aiming at a bird, and my father starts growing wings. Each carries a tender spot, something our lives forgot to give us. A man builds a house and says, I am native now. A woman speaks to a tree in place of her son, and olives come. A child's poem says, I don't like wars, they end up with monuments. He's painting a bird with wings wide enough to cover 2 roofs at once. Why are we so monumentally slow? Soldiers stalk a pharmacy, big guns, little pills. If you tilt your head just slightly, it's ridiculous. There's a place in my brain where hate won't grow. I touch its riddle, wind and seeds. Something pokes us as we sleep. It's late, but everything comes next.
I want to thank Adie and Sarah for such thoughtful readings tonight and for really meeting this moment, both of you. Thank you. A little logistics for the low residency creative writing students. Tomorrow morning, Megan Milks and Emily Prado are going to be doing a conversation discussing, among other things, revision. And they have requested that you all bring hard copies of something that you would like to be revising. It can be an excerpt, it can be something that's complete. The recommendation was also made that it be double spaced, so that you have some room to kind of work. I'm also going to be bringing in some supplies, scissors and glue, I believe. Those of you on the Zoom here in the room, please bring something to revise tomorrow. That's the request. Thank you all for coming tonight, and tomorrow evening again, Jess Arndt, Megan Milks, Lara Mimosa Montes, and Emily Prado. They're reading at National. Have a good evening.